Howdy and welcome to Bamberger Ranch. My name is Aldo Leopold. I'm the director of the Texas A&M Natural Resources Institute, and we're going to continue our Leopold Live series here at Bamberger, continuing to talk about the 5 basic tools introduced by Aldo Leopold, the father of wildlife management. These 5 tools include cow, axe, plow, fire, and gun. And what we hope to do in the upcoming months is show you how those tools can be applied, but with very specific projects and objectives. And so with me is Dr. April Sampson. She's the executive director of Bamberger, and she's going to tell us a little bit about Bamberger and what we hope to cover in the series.
Great. Thank you so much, Roel. We're really excited to have you and your colleagues from the Natural Resources Institute back here at Selah Bamberger Ranch Preserve. And we're excited about continuing our journey into Leopold Live version 2. Like Roel said, we'll be providing more detail and more useful information regarding the 5 tools that Aldo Leopold championed. Here at Selah Bamberger Ranch Preserve, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our mission is landowner stewardship, outreach, and environmental education. So we have many Central Texas school children that come visit us every year for hands-on science-based environmental education lessons, and we also lead showcase tours and workshops for landowners interested in practicing restoration and good land stewardship. So we're very happy to be partnering with Natural Resources Institute, and we know that you'll benefit a lot from the information that we are going to be talking about during this new version of Leopold Live.
So let's go ahead and get started.
Great.
Hello again, I'm Stephen Fulton. Welcome to another session of Leopold Live. Today we're going to talk about brush management and as a method of habitat management, brush control as a method of habitat management. And though here on the ranch we mostly use either mechanical or biological means to control our brush, we also use in limited amounts herbicides, and that's what we're going to talk about today. There is multiple species that can be treated with herbicide, but for the most part, we're concentrating on the more brushy species, the woody species, exotic invasives, and even some native species that are much more difficult to control or are growing in areas where mechanical control is just not possible. Before we get into talking about herbicides or other chemical applications, we really need to discuss how we keep ourselves safe during the process of using this treatment method. So before we ever pull the chemicals out of the storage cabinet that we keep them in, we will make sure we have all of our personal protective equipment, our PPE, necessary. At least a long sleeve shirt. Again, the idea is to protect as much skin and sensitive membranes, i.e. the eyes, as much of that as possible. So a long sleeve shirt is a definite must. If you can live with a Tyvek suit and not just sweat to death like I'm doing right now, that's even better because it covers more area, obviously. Nitrile gloves. We normally wear these under our work gloves because if we're handling brush species and we're lopping and using the brush cutter to cut that, these will get tore all to pieces. So having your work gloves over top of these nitrile gloves will prevent these from tearing up and so remain as a liquid barrier. And then as far as the eyes, a good pair of either chemical applicators goggles like these, or just protective eyeglasses, but as long as they have the wraparound sides. Again, just anytime that chemical you're putting out, if it's aerosolized, you want to make sure you protect as much of your body as possible. And also, again, if you're doing a more aerosol treatment, definitely a filter mask like this is a must. these chemicals can be very harmful if inhaled. Okay. Now moving on from our protective equipment, the equipment that we use to apply these chemicals, and that all kind of depends on what our target is and what kind of area we want to cover, what our target species is. For instance, which we do very little of, but if we wanted to take some of our improved grass pastures and say we're running low on hay, and we want to get a cutting of hay from that pasture, we will use a more broad foliar spray, and we'll use this big John Bean sprayer here with the nozzles that put out a nice cone of spray where we can drive through that pasture applying that chemical. It's going to be a broadleaf weed killer, probably a 2,4-D derivative, just to kill out the weeds. And so we have a nice grass pasture that we can then cut and bale later on. And again, before you ever add chemical to any of your equipment, we want to check for leaks. So we'll fill this with water. Before we add the chemical, we'll pressure test everything, make sure there's no leaks. The same thing goes for your little hand applicator, or a lot of people use a 30-gallon tank in the back of their RV. Not the RV, ATV. RV, that would be crazy. You can cut that part out. So, and then going on even further, most of our application is a cut stump treatment. So say we're targeting willow baccharis, also known as poverty weed, Roosevelt weed. It goes by many different names. It is a native species, but it can become very numerous to where it completely takes over washes or drainages. So our preferred method for that is this very, very complicated, very well engineered device. It's a paintbrush on a stick. So pair of loppers, again a brush cutter. You go along, you cut that near the base of the plant, and you have some of your chemical in this can, which we will demonstrate here in a few moments. You get a little bit of that chemical on the brush. You dab it on that cut stump where that fresh wound. And then hopefully that plant has enough absorption where it won't root sprout. So that's really the issue that we have with a lot of our woody species, is that they will root sprout. We're lucky that our ash juniper does not root sprout, because we can mechanically control that very easily. But pretty much everything else that we have here that can get out of balance will root sprout or crown sprout. So in those cases, it might take several applications of a cut stump treatment or basal treatment. We try to refrain from using a whole lot of foliar treatments, just because that's aerosolized and your chemical can get on non-target species. So again, a very targeted way. Also, for things like poison oak along our walking trails or in our people-friendly areas around our yards, we'll put a little bit of a mixture of chemical in it, just a squirt bottle. Again, have your PPE on, and we'll just spot spray that poison oak or greenbrier, things that we really don't want to touch. And if you go try to manage it in mechanical means, you might have a nice rash or some thorns ripping your skin up. Let's see. Again, you want to always keep your equipment in good shape. As far as when to apply your chemicals, there's the best time of year, of course, is when those plants are actively growing. Whether it's a foliar spray or a cut stump treatment or a basal application, when those plants are actively growing, say in the spring. Normally, this year has been abnormal. We've had rain all summer, so plants are still growing. But normally in the spring is when you want to make your chemical applications, because as they're growing, they will uptake more of that chemical. So less chemical and a more efficient rate of kill on those target species. Now, before you decide to to buy a bunch of chemicals and apply them. I really urge everybody, even if the chemicals are not a controlled substance or a controlled chemical or a controlled herbicide, I really do urge people that are going to use this as a tool for management to get their applicator's license. Okay. I have maintained my applicator's license. I got it through AgriLife Extension, who is our partner today in conjunction with NRI. So just took the course through AgriLife Extension, was awarded my my applicator's license. I keep that up. Now some of the things you want to do to maintain that applicator's license is you want to keep really good records. Now, there's a lot of stuff you have to take down for records, so I'm not going to remember them all, but the easy ones: time, date of application, location of application, target species, what chemical you're using, who was the applicator, applicator's license, things like that, are what need to be recorded. What was your application rate? There's a long list of information that needs to be recorded to maintain that applicator's license and to make sure that the chemicals you're using are being used safely and efficiently. Now, before we get off the air, I would like to demonstrate one of the methods that we use prominently here on the ranch is a cut stump treatment. Here beside me is an example of one of the invasive exotic species that we do find here on the ranch. It's a vitex or a lavender vitex or a lavender chase tree. Again, it goes by many names. Been planted for decades as an ornamental. It does come from the Mediterranean part of the world. It is not super invasive, but it is, obviously we have a sprout of one here. When the mother tree is a good 50 yards away. So it will definitely reseed itself. So we're going to go ahead and cut this one and treat the stump the freshly cut stump. And here helping me out today to demonstrate this is our wonderful intern, Seamus. And the chemical we're using today, or the chemical mixture we're using today, is a Remedy type. Now, Remedy is a brand name. I believe the chemical name is tricopler. I'm sure I butchered that, but as you may have noticed, as he poured just a little bit of that chemical into the paint bucket, is that it is red in color. Well, that's because our diesel is our farm diesel. It's got a red dye to it. So again, just a cut stump treatment. Try to cut that stump as close to the soil as you can, again, so that you have a larger size stump to treat. Again, the whole trick to this is try to get as much chemical targeted on that small area, but as much uptake to where that chemical can go throughout the root system and go ahead and get rid of this plant so it doesn't sprout back. Once they sprout back, a lot of times they're much more difficult to eradicate. Now, this is a plant that we could treat mechanically or biologically, but just for demonstration purposes today, we're going to use the cut stump treatment. Okay, and that was easy enough, and my help has disappeared. So now again, bringing this all back to the wildlife valuation, as a type of habitat control, not only habitat control, but also control of an invasive exotic species like the vitex, like chinaberry, like ligustrum, like nandina. The list can go on and on and on. Chinese tallow, it goes on and on and on. Using herbicide is an approved method for that habitat control for wildlife valuation. However, you don't want to you have some limits as far as brush control. So either 10% of your entire area or 10 acres, whichever is the smallest. So we're not talking about a large scale application of herbicides. So yeah, do we have any questions from the audience?
Yeah, Steve, earlier you mentioned the proper storage of your equipment and the herbicides that you're using. Can you tell our landowners where the proper storage is and how to properly store these?
Okay, yes, it's very important that you properly store your chemicals, like your herbicides and your fertilizers. You don't want any tiny people getting in there and you know, endangering themselves. So we have a steel cabinet that has locks on it that we keep locked. So keep it stored in there. Now, again, it's not indoors, but it is under a roof. So a lot of these chemicals, you don't want them to get hot because it'll decrease their efficacy. So again, in a shaded kind of cool area, definitely can be outside, in a garage, in a shop, in a barn, but always locked up in a cabinet that can't be, you know, burglarized by small people or animals.
And then one more question for you. Thinking about applying these herbicides, what is the best time of year to do that?
Again, normally the best time of year is that time of year when the plants are actively growing. Normally for us, that's the springtime. Again, that's when you'll get the most uptake of that herbicide. So you can use a smaller amount and you'll get a more efficient kill, a higher kill rate, and it'll be you use that chemical more efficiently. There are things that's like surfactants that you can add to your chemicals that can help, that will increase their efficacy, especially if you're applying to plants that have a more waxy leaf surface. So that surfactant basically just washes away that waxy covering, so more of that chemical can be up to. But there's all kinds of chemistry, and I don't know that much about it. So.
And then one more question that just came to mind. Could
Yeah,
you
lots of
talk
clipping.
about natural alternatives to any of these herbicides that could be used?
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me about that, because I do have some natural alternatives right here, and I meant to talk about that. But there are beginning to be more and more natural, organic methods of control for woody plants, and even broadleaf annuals or forbs. Now, one thing to keep in mind is the price. If you own just 5 acres, you can afford to pay twice the price to get your totally organic, safe herbicide treatments. But when you're on 5,500 acres, that's not always the best use of your economics. But we do use some organic fertilizers, definitely, and some herbicide treatments. So always search out every avenue and just find what's best for you ethically and economically.
All right, well, that was pretty exciting. Thank you for joining our session of Leopold Live. Again, we'd like to thank all those speakers and those that participated with our session. Look for upcoming sessions over the course of the next year, and our hope is to cover these very specific topics that are of interest to landowners and natural resource managers.
That's right. And I'd like to thank once again the Natural Resources Institute for coming out here and helping us provide this valuable information. At Bamberger Ranch Preserve, we hope to have our programming, including our workshops and tours, back up and running by the fall, depending on how things go. So make sure to watch for both the Texas A&M Natural Resources Institute and Bamberger Ranch Preserve on your social media channels, and make sure to check in every once in a while and see what we're up to.